Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm here with Simon Crafar again. Thank you very much for joining me, Simon. Last time we had a wonderful conversation, and we went a little bit over 3 hours, I believe. So, yeah, it's always great to talk to you, and I really appreciate that you take your time and join me to talk a little bit about the MotoGP tests. And just a quick heads up, I'm a little bit sick, so if my voice sounds a little bit different or you hear some coughing, I hope I can mute myself in time, but I apologize in advance if I don't get this right.
It's winter.
Yeah, it's winter. It's actually the first time I've been sick all year, so I'm more or less grateful. But it's, as every time, it's in the worst timing ever, because on Friday we fly to Barcelona over Christmas to go to the Christmas TT. But I hope I'll be fit again on Friday, because I'm much better already. But yeah, that's not...
Do your listeners know what the Christmas TT is? I wouldn't have,
Okay.
until recently.
Yeah, it's basically a motocross race at Rocco's Ranch. It's a motorcycle track near Barcelona, and all the riders, like Remy, for example, is there. And last year we were there as well. All the riders team up and have like an endurance race. They also have a sprint race, I believe. But yeah, it's nice because you can catch riders a little bit off the, let's say, off the pressure of being a MotoGP riders, and you talk to them a little bit more
It's a
calmly.
big fun laugh event, I mean, sure, they take it seriously when they get on the bike, but it's a lot of fun. They use a lot of people will remember the XR 100 little four-strokes, or then it became a CRF 100, same engine. That is the bike they must use, the base bike, and then they modify it and team up and then change riders like an endurance race with this little bike. We have something similar in New Zealand, but typical New Zealand fashion, which they don't do here, to change bike, the rider that when he finishes his tank of fuel or 1 hour or whatever you decide to do, when he pulls into the tent, it's like a parc ferme. The other guy is not allowed to get onto the bike. Once he gets off, the next rider starts to drink his 2-liter jug of beer. And then when he finishes the 2-liter jug of beer and puts it on the barrel, the 200-liter barrel, then he's allowed to go to the bike and go. And this is the changeover. Can you imagine? And it's a 6 hour. So, yeah. So it's a little bit different environment than that. But yeah, a lot of countries have it.
I don't know if they have to use the CRF, because as I recall, last year there were a lot of 450s and like also different manufacturers, but I'm not quite sure.
Well, okay. Remy was telling me about the 100 that he's built, So the endurance race, I'm pretty sure, is this.
Okay.
Maybe they have some other sprint races as well.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the rule set, because I mostly go there to have fun, and the after party is always great. I talked to Randy Memela last year. He was very, very friendly.
He's riding as well, isn't he? Yeah.
I don't know if he's riding.
Yeah. I saw he's teamed up with Carlos Checa, and they're calling it the junior team, So, yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of
nice
team up. Anyway, I'm sure people want to hear about MotoGP, but that's what that Christmas TT is.
Yeah. What did you do after the test? Do you relax a little bit?
Yeah. My wife hadn't seen her father for 6 years, and which is obviously too long. And just life goes, when you're living on the other side of the world, passes by quickly. And he's in his early 80s, so we arranged that as soon as I finished the test and got home, a day or so later, she would fly to Australia. So I've been playing mum and dad in the house, cooking and, looking after the 3 dogs, 2 kids that come and go, growing up kids, and keeping the place in control. So that's what I've been doing in the last 2 weeks. And I was worried that I would go a bit stir crazy, but I've loved it. Just disconnect from, from work and, connect with my kids and dogs.
That's beautiful. I can imagine, especially after the second half of the season, all the traveling, like you must have been totally exhausted.
Uh, I won't say I'm totally exhausted. I can recover and keep going. You know what I mean? Because I get to go away from the race between races. But yeah, you could feel a lot of people were burned out. And I feel especially sorry for the people working in the paddock who have young children at home, because that's the reason I left the paddock in the first place. Now mine are 19 and 22, and it's not the same. We can keep in touch with WhatsApp, but when they're small, it breaks your heart to be away too long. So they're the people I feel sorry for the most.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have the same relationship with our dog because I'm in Berlin at the moment studying, and my girlfriend's still at home. She will move here as well in January, and obviously I miss my girlfriend, but it breaks a little bit my heart when I see the dog on FaceTime and she's doing stuff. She's not here, so yeah, I maybe miss her a little bit more. Yeah, so let's get into MotoGP and especially Honda, because I think Honda is a very, very big talking point. So I've read that Honda made some big improvements, and I've also heard that there was a little bit of strategy going on, that they played their cards very well to get concessions. Like, that's just a rumor I've heard. I don't know if there's anything to it. But they brought basically nothing to the Misano test. They were apparently very disappointed, the riders. And now, after they got the concessions, we basically are hearing from Joan Mir that they are doing very well. And also, I believe Taka came out and said that he is very satisfied with the progress Honda's made. So, what do you know about Honda? What did they bring to the test?
Okay, so, just as a bit of background, I would say that Honda were totally, in my opinion, in the shit, because they weren't just bad with aerodynamics. They weren't just bad with the other devices. They weren't just bad with electronics in the electronic area in the last years. So all the new, the modern stuff, but the base bike, I think, is lagging behind the others as well. Yeah, it's fast enough, but it's not all about speed anymore. The Honda spins up the rear wheel, so aggressive power delivery or whatever it is that is doing this. The riders complain about it all day, every day in their debriefs, So, and that isn't the aero. You know what I'm saying? It isn't. It's something to do with the engine, electronics, the way that it's putting the power on the ground. So in every area, they are behind, So then we get to Misano test, and it's been like this for some time, a couple of years, of that they're lagging behind. Misano test, as you said, was a big disappointment. I mean, I was furious, and I don't have to ride the bike, I'm just reporting on meaning I was furious because the lack of things that I believed they tried. For example, the engines all sound the same. There's no experimenting with firing order like other manufacturers have done and succeeded, made progress with KTM, for example. And when I saw that Marc Marquez went out at the end of the day on his old bike, the bike he rode the race with at Misano, and went faster, that tells you everything you need to know, that the new bike, yeah, as he said, was different. It did things differently, but the end result was no better. And so once you know all of that, that they are so far behind in almost every area, when I watched the test, watched the lap times, and then listened to the riders, I walked away thinking, yes, this is the first time in a couple of years that they've made a step forward, in aero and rear grip. That was the area that the riders have said was a step forward, but it was a small one. and there's no way it's going to be enough, So that's where they are at the moment. That's my opinion.
I remember us and also me and Jack Gors talking loads about the engine because, again, like 80% of the rear grip comes from your engine. And it's fascinating when you consider that now they have concessions, they can develop the engine. And I've heard that Honda is still like the only manufacturer with an engine that sounds like a screamer. I don't know if they have changed it.
Well, no, that is my opinion as well. Jack and I talk a lot about that, and my opinion is that it's the most screamer firing order of all the machines. All the others have gone a more big bang. To obviously to try to. I mean, they've gone more big bang, and they haven't lost peak power. The other manufacturers. They've made it a better connection, a better feel for the rider, a better grip for the rear tire, and they have not lost peak power. They told me this, two of the European manufacturers. So that's why I was convinced that Honda would try it in Misano. It's so obvious the others have made progress here, and they didn't. And it's one of the reasons I was just like, I can't believe this. But they obviously know more than I do. It's just, why I'm getting frustrated with them, So, yeah, that what Jack was talking about is a very clever engineer in the paddock told me that 80% of the rear grip comes from the engine character. And he was saying, then you help it, you try to improve with chassis suspension, linkage and electronics. But if the engine character is wrong in the first place, you can't make it better, There's no. So, and this guy is one of the guys who's built one of the engines that is working, and to me, this is my belief, that there's something in the Honda engine character there. It's great for peak power, but it's not getting the grip on the ground because the riders complain so much about it. I mean, if you only have to go, Tucker says it straight. He just said the thing's spinning in a straight line, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And tried everything electronic wise for a couple of years. And then Mark just points out that if a track is stop start, excuse me, so the drive areas, the bike is relatively upright, he can make the bike compete. But if he says if you have to drive out on an angle, onto a straight, you're forced to, for example, some of the corner, the big long corner tracks, big fast. He says there's nothing I can do. It's got no edge grip, and then it spins on the edge, and then when I get it upright, it still spins, so I lose too much, But yeah, so just to summarize on the Honda thing, yes, I believe for the first time they've made a step forward with aero. You have to be careful, though. The riders are saying, it's a step forward, and they're positive about it. And they did point out it's not enough. It's just a step in the right direction, so we're happy. But you've got to remember, Valencia is a peculiar track. You cannot just go on Valencia because it's got no really fast corners, So you have to wait to get to Sepang to double check that stuff works still. And Yamaha caught out with that last year, remember? Last year they tried a higher downforce, thought, hey, this is really good at Valencia, and then they ended up throwing it in the bin, didn't they? After a few races, because it didn't work at the other tracks. So, yeah, the rear grip sounds positive. They've found something that is a step forward rear grip wise. Good for the Honda riders. But my gut feeling is this is a small step forward. Let's hope they're working hard over winter because they need the biggest step forward for Sepang.
I would like to get a little bit into conspiracy theories because, do you think that Honda was sandbagging a little bit at the Misano test to get the concessions? And
No,
okay.
I genuinely don't believe that. Because you think about it, they wanted to keep Mark. I mean,
That was my second. That was my second
and they're
conspiracy theory.
proud. They're proud You know, they want the bike. The engineers want to succeed. The last thing they want to do is turn up and at a test and nothing is better and they've failed. You know what I mean? To their bosses. So I really don't believe that. No.
That basically was my second conspiracy theory. If they wanted Mark to go to Ducati because he still has a big salary for Honda, and if they maybe said, okay, this like 20, 25 million we are paying him isn't worth it at the moment because we aren't competitive. We are better off with a cheaper rider and have more money for development, maybe.
Look, again, I think the Japanese are proud and they are normally, from my dealings, I've ridden for all four of the Japanese manufacturers on factory machinery. You know, sometimes satellite teams, sometimes factory team, but I've ridden for all four. So I know roughly how they work, you know, and I don't believe they'd ever sandbag like that. They want to turn up and show how strong they are, you know. It's a sport. I really don't believe it. So.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Luca Marini. And I'm quite behind the idea of Honda signing Luca Marini, but I really don't understand why Luca Marini wanted to go to Honda, because apparently he even approached them to replace Marc Marquez. And I would like to get into like, why did Honda chose Luca Marini? What does he bring to the table? And also, why did Marini chose Honda? What are the benefits like besides being a factory rider?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you've got to consider is the likeliness of Luca being a factory Ducati rider, you know, and moving up is not high. You know, they've got like they've obviously got the two factory riders. Then if one of them moves aside, then they've got Martin and Bezecchi. I think Bezecchi's going to be. He's proved how good he is. You know, before he got hurt, he ran away from the field a couple of times. I think he would have done it again once or twice if he hadn't gone hurt himself on a dirt bike. So you can see the chance of getting a factory bike and salary at Ducati is, you know what I'm saying, is difficult. To be one of the two chosen riders in the red team, it's going to be hard. And then Honda, everyone knows, is not going to stay lying down. They've already said that they're not leaving the championship, you know, because there was talk of that this summer. People were worried. I was as well, you know. And so they're going to keep, and they are the biggest, most powerful manufacturer, you know, motorcycle in the world. And you think about the timing, if you bet on yourself, you know, that you can give them good feedback and get the bike to be built around you over the next year or two, it's an opportunity, you know, that would be very hard to get if they weren't down at the moment, you know, meaning they would keep Mark and, you know, Mayor or whatever's happening, but they lost that. And this is an opportunity for someone who believes, that's what I think, who believes that they can turn the bike around and in the first year and then start to um, reap the rewards in the second year, you know, and that's why he's done a 2-year deal. And then you ask, who got asked is Johan Zarco about this. Johan Zarco said I was at the debrief when he first got told it's official, Luca's going, you know, and actually it wasn't official, but everyone pretty much knew that it was going to happen, and he was going, really? And during the debrief, and he was going, that's not a bad move because Luca, you know, in the Ducati group of riders, they all know how each other works. And he was singing the praises basically of Luca, saying he is not the most natural ability, you know, pure speed rider, for example, like Jorge Martin. So he does it by intelligence, by finding the way to ride the bike, how to set the bike to get the result. And he's won on a Ducati like that. So this is a good thing to bring to Honda. Do you see what I mean? Like a rider that's pure natural ability just gets on, rides it, isn't going to figure out how to make the bike better as well. He's got to rely on the engineers. Where a rider that does figure out how to win by making the bike better and then him ride it, he's saying this is a good addition, and so I'm just telling you about it. He knows more about what Luca does behind the scenes than I do. And so yeah, that's what I'd say. That's the two sides.
I have very much respect for Luca because he got the 2-year deal, and apparently Honda approached Miguel, and Miguel wanted a 2-year deal as well, and Honda said no because they wanted to keep their options for 2025. But for some reason, Luca got the 2-year deal, and
Yes.
I have so much respect for this right now. And also, the most important question for me regarding Honda and Luca Marini is, do you think Valentino Rossi will get his NSR 500 now that he's missing from his collection?
I have no idea, buddy. I'm not going to pretend to know. Yeah, obviously there was a bit of fighting going on there, and look, I'm not going to guess what's going to happen because I have no more idea than you. Sorry.
I hope he will get it because I think he deserves it. Maybe if Luca does good. So I would like to talk to you about Yamaha. And the big thing is obviously Yamaha. What did they bring to the test? And do you think it's enough what they're doing to convince Fabio to stay? Because they have, like, let's say, a 6 to 10 race window to convince him, okay, this is going into the right direction before he starts negotiating with other manufacturers. But again, we've seen contracts being made in the off season, so I don't know where Fabio is at the moment. But where do you think is Yamaha going with the updates they brought to Valencia?
So Yamaha was very similar to Honda in that they made a small step forward engine-wise. Honda was rear grip, Yamaha was power, a small step, and then really smooth as well, trying to keep that grip. And because at the end, just for the listeners, they have a lot of power. The idea is to, like this championship has always been, it's about who can use the tires the best, who can get the most from the tires over the race distance. And it's always been like that. It was in my time before me, and it's still like that now. So when I rode, for an example, got to ride the 2022 GP22 at Misano last year. On the real tires with the electronics, and I could not believe how smooth it was, and it didn't feel fast, even though it was extremely fast. So that's what Ducati have got right, and it's what the others have to get right. And so what I'm saying is Yamaha made a little step in that direction, small. They've got their engine builder. I keep forgetting his name. Is it Luca Marmarini or sorry, I should have it in front of me. They've hired an Italian ex-Formula One engine builder. He's working with them and basically developing the engine they have, trying to develop in the way that the riders need it. And so small positive. And what I got from Merigali was we've had a small step here, but the big step we expect at Sepang. The Sepang will be the engines we hope to run in 2024. So, and that's the same in previous years, and a couple of years ago, remember, it didn't work, wasn't reliable. They had to revert. Yamaha are completely different people for me to deal with, but also from their approach. They're much more open. Honda are isolated. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say they're isolated in the paddock, and I think this is a part of the reason that they've got down so low at the moment. It's okay to be isolated and isolate yourself when you have an advantage, so others don't, find it out. But it's something else to be isolated when you are at a big deficit, well behind. And because the quickest way, the engineers will admit this. One of them told me this. Look, the quickest way is to learn what someone else has done and progressed with, and because if you have to develop yourself, it will take a couple of years, And Honda, I don't even believe that their engineers in the paddock know what Honda are thinking, That it's, and then their engineers in the paddock don't speak freely with the rest of the paddock. So it's real isolated thing, Honda. And where Yamaha, it's not like that, really. The engineers in the paddock know what the factory are thinking and what they're working on, then the engineers in the paddock speak more openly with others. They work, which is how every other manufacturer works in the paddock. Suzuki was like that. The other Italian manufacturers are like that. KTM are more like that. They're talking, trying to learn at the same time as trying to go ahead themselves. Excuse to go off track, but what I'm, to make this so long, but what I'm trying to say is, I've heard Yamaha have not only hired the people to develop the engine for them in the right way, but also the aero. So I don't know who this is, but I believe I've heard a whisper that they've hired some serious people for aero to help them. At the first test, it looks like they've headed in the right direction already. So let's hope the next ones head that way as well. But what I'm saying is I have no idea what Honda are up to because they're so isolated and who's doing it. But Yamaha, I believe, have hired both aero people and the engine guy who they're open about having. And let's hope that those steps forward are good because they have the riders that will get the results straight away if they are good, if the bike is good.
One of the big problems Yamaha had was overtaking.
Yes.
Do you think it's a lack of engine power to get close or a lack of braking stability, lack of aerodynamics? What do you think is the problem there? And do you think they're on the right track of fixing it?
That's a really good question because, and I don't believe it's one thing. Yes, at the end of the straight, you need pure power, the second half of the straight, basically. But until the first half, it's managing wheelie, it's managing rear grip because these bikes are like 300 horsepower. So it's not a lack of power the first half of the straight. It is having the device working well, having the electronics working well, having that engine character that doesn't spin the rear tire, and even if everything's right, if the aero isn't helping the wheelie, then the engine's going to limit anyway because the thing wheelies, and then it stops going forward. So it's all of the things you said, it's the whole package. And then the second half of the straight, yes, it's power because not only to stay with the other bikes, but to push the aero that you have, because the more downforce you have, the more power you need to push it, the second half of that straight. So it's to answer your question, Yamaha have to develop all of those things together to be able to. These days, it's not just one thing.
Yeah. Talking about Yamaha, there was always this comparison between Suzuki and Yamaha because they're both the only inline fours.
Mm-hmm.
And now with Alex Rins, we have a rider who has ridden them both. And I've read that they are not very similar. So what do you think about the characteristics of the Yamaha in comparison with the Suzuki? And do you think that Alex Rins can adapt quickly and be competitive?
Alex is one of the more natural riders in the whole paddock. I don't think I'm telling you anything that you won't know. He's when I watch him, he's the most equal to the most natural ability rider in the paddock. He's unbelievable. He like a match for Fabio. The thing that Fabio does stand out is be able to do it with and crash minimum. He doesn't crash very often, which is very special. But I believe Alex can do the same speed. You know what I mean? He's just as natural ability rider. He needs to get his confidence back. I think going through that LCR Honda experience, basically the Honda experience, would have knocked his confidence. And then the injury would have knocked his confidence. So I expect him to take some time to get back to his best. But if Yamaha turn up with, and I believe they can, pure power, I don't think they'll ever get to match the V4s, but I think they have advantages in other areas. And if they use what they have and develop it to which is what they're trying to do, develop it to its potential, I believe, yes, that they'll have some advantages, at some tracks. So, you see it with Aprilia. It's a V4 that works more like an inline, the way they've built it, and you see it gets to some tracks and it has an advantage. So yeah, I think there's circuits like Silverstone, Phillip Island, Barcelona. There's a couple others, Assen especially, that the inline style bike really works. So let's hope Yamaha can squeeze everything out of it. I think they haven't developed. They've fallen behind like Honda have with aerodynamics and other areas and horsepower. So let's hope they can catch back up because they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, and regarding the crashing, I mean, remember in 2021, Alex Rins was crashing all the time and he was complaining about a lack of power because he had to push so much.
Yeah.
Then in 22, Suzuki brought basically the perfect bike for him, I believe, because he was so good at the beginning of the season. And I believe he would have competed for a world championship this season if Suzuki didn't pull out, because I think this basically knocked the confidence out of the whole team. And thinking about how the championship played out in 2022, it was a weird one, with Pecco obviously gaining so many points over Fabio at the end of the season. And I think that if Yamaha can give Alex a similar bike where he feels confident on, but isn't in a situation where he has to push too much because he has a lack of power, then I believe Alex Rins can be super competitive. And I really hope that Yamaha fixes, first of all, for Fabio's sake, because Fabio doesn't deserve this. And second of all, for Alex's sake, because after the horrible Honda experience, I would call it a nightmare, the LCR nightmare.
Yeah. I'm really sorry. I just want to hold you for a moment and my wife has headphones on so she doesn't have to listen to me yelling.
Yeah.
No. But the dog, I can hear the dog wants to come in and she doesn't realize. So, sweet. So, firstly, I just wanted to throw out something you said likely would have been competitive in the championship this year. The Suzuki, if they'd kept going, I don't know, because I thought the Aprilia was going to be competitive this year because of how good it was the year before. And I think it was better than the Suzuki was level the year before, 2022. But the problem is everyone, well, especially Ducati and KTM, moved the goalposts again. They went forward a little bit more, and I don't know if Suzuki would have done that, So we don't. We're never going to know, We can hope or believe or what we want. But what I'm saying is you stand still in this championship and, I think Aprilia have stood still a little too much in the last 12 months, even though they made incredible gains in the last couple of years. And then that is why they had a tough, that and some dodgy decisions, tyre choices and stuff. But what I'm saying is you can never guess how someone would have gone because it's constantly evolving, It's crazy. They're coming, KTM were coming with parts even the second half of the season. We saw with the carbon fiber chassis, different exhaust, stuff we couldn't see, and yeah, they're constantly chasing that Ducati. So yes, look, I've ridden a different inline fours. I rode the Yamaha, couple of different models. At Suzuki. I rode Kawasaki for a couple of years, and they're both inlines, and they acted differently. They had different strong points in that, but they had some similarities, compared to V4, for example. I rode the RC45, RC30 before that. The Yamaha that I raced, the YZR was a V4. But what I'm saying is they're all different, and they all have different strong and points and weak points. But yeah, I don't know what else to say from here. But I believe if the bike is competitive, Alex will find, and Fabio find the strong points and use them. That's what good riders do.
Yeah. Regarding the championship, I was talking about 2022.
Okay.
And not 23, because I think,
see.
Because I think the way the 22 championship played out, because
I see what
Fabio
you mean.
was
Yeah.
not very good at the end of the season, and Pecco had all those crashes. I think
Yeah.
a consistent Alex Rins, because he was on track to
Good
be
point.
consistent and good.
Yep.
Before the announcement, I believe it was before Jerez,
And they lost a bit of steam
yeah,
from there on. Yeah.
and then at the end of the season, he was incredible again.
Yep.
So yeah, I think in 22,
I see what you mean.
Yeah, regarding 23, obviously we never know, and there's so much especially with the dominance of Ducati, it's hard to imagine. So yeah, but speaking of Ducati, we don't know too much about Marc Marquez because he isn't allowed to talk to the media up until the 1st of January. So basically, more or less a week from now, maybe we will be smarter then. But what did you observe regarding his Ducati debut at the Valencia test?
Well, for starters, like I said, I got to ride that bike, the model before. Actually, yeah, very, very similar bike because it was, the latest Ducati, and in 22 was the base for 23. You see what I mean? For all the satellite bikes. So the bike I rode was very similar, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's the most impressive thing I've ever ridden, but in every area. So I think that we heard a few words, caught in the garage, and that basically he's trying to adapt himself and the bike to him to the bike, but it's a weapon, and so is he. So he's going to make friends with it quick, and I'd go as far as saying I wouldn't be surprised if he wins in the first two races, and then continues to be a threat for the championship. We've got a noisy boy. Get the squirter bottle on him. He has this. I don't know if you've seen him, but he's a Czech wolf dog, and he's a big boy, and he has this crazy hour of dusk, and that he's just full of beans, like I imagine it's when they go hunting or something normally. So it takes him a little bit to settle. But anyway, he's demanding things. Sorry, what we were saying. Mark is, everyone knows he's going, because he's got so much motivation, hunger, which we've seen why he's come back from such horrific injuries. And it's why he's won so many championships in the beginning. He's so motivated, so hungry. He's got awesome talent as well. I don't think more than others. I just think his motivation and hunger in that is exceptionally high. But on the best bike, he's going to be so dangerous.
When was the last time that a satellite rider who didn't have the factory spec version won a championship? Do you know this?
No. It's not in the era that I know and have been involved in.
I mean, it
So
was definitely not in MotoGP. The last satellite rider who won the World Championship was Valentino. But I believe the NSR was factory spec. So it was the 2001 version of the bike and not the 2000 version of the bike. So, and everything before that is before my time. So I don't know. I was just wondering if you know, but
no. But you got to remember, like as a an overall, that Ducati were the first ones to give the real equipment to satellite teams, in this MotoGP era, and because before the remember those customer bikes, they were junk. The Honda customer, that Mark VDS ran, Jack one on at Assen. They were terrible. They weren't competitive. It was Jack rode amazing when it was dodgy conditions, and what I'm saying is Ducati started this trend of giving satellite teams real equipment. As in they've got, the satellite teams. You've got to remember Pramac have start the year with the same equipment, and so do Gas, Tech 3 start the year with the KTM's same equipment. And so they've started this, the LCR start the year with the same equipment as Honda. Honda develop on. The factory team get first to the new parts. But in the same in Pramac and factory. And next year, I know Aprilia are trying to do this because it works. Not only are your satellite riders more competitive, they can give you relative information because they're on the same equipment, and it helps your team as well as them. And you can talk in the evenings about setups. And so since this has started happening, I remember interviewing was Hervé Poncharal after. It must have been a similar time when Oliveira won on his Tech 3 KTM, at, I think it was Brno. And he was saying that now that the satellite teams have the support from the factory and the real equipment, it's only a matter of time before a satellite rider wins the championship. And he said that, that was a few years ago now, probably 3 years ago.
yeah, Brno was won by Brad Binder on the factory bike, actually. It
Yep.
was in 2020. And I believe you're talking about Austria, where.
Yes, Austria.
Yeah.
Did I say Brno?
Yeah, you said
Oh,
Brno.
sorry. Oh, sorry about that. I meant you did right. It was Austria
Yeah.
that was a slip of the tongue. Sorry, my brain was somewhere else. But it was definitely Austria. Yeah, that he won on the blue and silver, Red Bull coloured KTM.
Yeah.
Of Tech 3.
Talking about this, what do you know about the GP24 and what are the differences to the GP23?
I looked at it and I couldn't tell any difference, and I don't know if you followed the test. And so I couldn't see anything different. I was looking at the bikes that had moved down to the garages from the factory team in Pramac, and then I was looking at the 24 bike, which they had each rider had one, and so they're actually 23 and 24 sitting next to each other. I couldn't tell any difference. Could see which one was sparkling new and had no sticker on from the race weekend, technical control. So you can see which is the old one, which is the new one. And so I said to Davide Tardozzi on the live, Davide, I can't see any difference, with the old bike and the new. And he said, that's because they're identical. And I said, well, where is the difference then? Is it suspension, electronics, engine? And he went, the engine. So then that evening, listening to all the rider debriefs, the riders confirmed that, and they liked the engine. So basically they explained that the Pecco did a really good job of explaining it. The 23 was a step in a direction. Yes, it was faster, but it was harder to get to stop in the braking zone. Okay, it was harder, and it took time to learn that. and Jorge confirmed that. Bastianini confirmed that. Then, so remember they had an experiment with the 22 that did not work. And the Pramac continued with it, had a lot of rear spinning, so they had more power but less rear grip. Then the 23, they figured that out. They got the drive, and there was more power, but it was difficult to stop. So it shows that when you've got a very good bike, it's hard to improve it overall. You go good in one direction and bad in another. And so what Pecco basically said is the 24 is between the 22 and the 23. So they've got the good areas and they haven't damaged the bad area, but he said it's basically between the two. And Bastianini really liked it because it's one of his weaknesses was trying to get it stopped, which, the engine was basically, they said the power delivery as well was slightly different. So it's power delivery, power, peak power, and ability to get it stopped, which I can only think that it's inertia. You know what I mean? If you struggle to stop a bike, it's normally the crank weight that is pushing you on. I know they have exhaust valves and stuff to help stop that, but when an engine affects braking area, I think it's inertia that they're talking about. But it sounds like they've been going back and forwards trying to find the sweet spot, and it sounds to me bad news for everyone else that sounds like they found it.
I remember talking to Jack about the Ducati after the Misano test.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, he said that they were experimenting a little bit with the chassis, trying some things out in Misano.
This is Ducati?
Yeah.
You did right. I saw Jorge Martin do a run on a chassis that I had seen 12 months before that they were trying it. But a lot of people got to try it. About 3 riders got to try it the year before. And what I believe is happening is Pirro has continued working on that, now likes it better than the other one, and is suggesting it to the riders to try, the factory riders, Pramac and factory. But the reason we didn't see that in Misano is obvious to me, also confirmed by different team managers, that they can play with the chassis at any time, but they have to confirm their engine now. So let's forget about the chassis, focus on the engine, give us the answer so we know what to build and what to homologate before, before Qatar. But and you've got to remember, it was only a 1-day test, which made it bloody hard because, normally over a multiple day test in Sepang and Qatar, I get to catch everything. I'm running around looking at different garages, popping up different times. But here, over 1 day, all manufacturers trying everything, it was very hard to catch everything because it was too much happening at once. And so what I'm saying is, I think in Sepang, we're going to see that chassis back that I believe Pirro likes better than the one that everyone's running. And the way to look at it to tell the difference is from behind when you look at the bike, which is easy to do because I'm watching them warm up. You look at the rear cylinder heads where, which is basically between the rider's legs, just below the fuel tank, above the foot pegs. In that area where the chassis drops down to the foot pegs, it's a lot thinner in that area. And what they've done on the previous models is had bolt-on sections that they could put in or out to change stiffness. And this one doesn't have that, but it's super thin. So, that's the difference.
Okay, because I was wondering when
It
you
wasn't
said
there.
that. Yeah,
It
I was
wasn't in
wondering when you
Valencia.
said that the bag was identical. Because I was thinking, wasn't there a new chassis on the way? But yeah, now I understand, and it makes total sense with the engine.
Yeah, sure. That's the one that they've got pressure on for
Yeah.
decisions. Yeah.
Do you think that Ducati shouldn't have given Jorge Martin the factory seat?
The thing is, remember Jorge got given that bike that I was telling you about that it had terrible rear grip, the 22 well, Mark 1, they had to stick with it. The factory team didn't. The Pramac bikes were the only ones out there with this difficult thing and Jorge had to change the setup to get it to give rear grip, meaning move weight rear. But that changes how the bike steers. So he lost other areas and he never really made friends with it. And he looked quite shit, didn't he? By the end of the year, you're starting to worry about Jorge. As soon as they gave him the bike with that fixed, that's not the only thing. The other thing is, I was worried about Jorge 12 months ago, and he, wondering how focused he was, meaning he was getting distracted by party and influencing girlfriends, and you know what I'm saying, taking the eye off the ball, not preparing yourself as well as you can. And he really did a good job. I saw him. He lives in Andorra as well, and he was out pre-season hammering himself. He looked the fittest he's ever been. He said he was. And you saw the result, of that mental focus. And so what, and I would say is in the period that Jorge was getting looked at for the factory, he was on that shit bike, and maybe also was not fully focused, and maybe one was affecting the other. Who knows? But at the end of the day, he's got a factory bike. It's the same spec as and maybe he's got a little bit less pressure as well, in that Pramac garage. So it's not bad, not a bad thing. So.
But it appears to me that it is important to him.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, he wants it.
Yeah.
He wants it. Yeah. And I mean, he'll get it at the end of 24 if he does the job. I'm pretty sure he knows that. Or he'll have the choice of where to go, if he carries on like he is, fully focused. And so can I just quickly throw across to, how I was talking about Jorge then being fully focused in preseason, and you really saw the result. Yes, he had the bike problem fixed, but he also fixed some of his own weaknesses, and it was beautiful to see. And right now, a lot of people are worrying about Jack Miller, and I think he's in exactly the same position. Yes, he's in a totally different stage of his career, but I think he's in the same position. Jack has the ability, I have no doubt, has the ability to regularly run where he should. And he hasn't, this year. But what I'm saying is we were all worried about Jorge 12 months ago. Now we're all worried about Jack. I just think if Jack can turn it around like Jorge did, focus-wise, meaning he got married, he had a pregnant wife most of the year, then he had a baby turn up, he had, that sponsorship from Caterpillar and built a new circuit and was focused. I'm like, I honestly believe that he had too many distractions, and if he sits down and recognizes that, which he will, and then does something about it, which is, look, let's face it, your children and your wife and you are more important. But if you can figure out a way to fully commit to your job, I think we'll see a Jack that people have already given up on, prove them wrong. That's what I hope happens. Let's see.
The thing with Jack and Jorge Martin, we always knew how incredibly talented Jorge Martin is, and we always knew how good he can be. With Jack, there was always this up and down. Like with Ducati, he had the best bike basically on the grid.
Yep.
Even though it was less dominant back then, but still he had some good races where he won 2 in a row, for example, and then was nowhere again. And I don't know if it's like what you said, his wife being pregnant and having a child, but it seems like it's more of a Jack Miller thing because it was always like this. But remember in 2014 when he fought for the Moto3 championship, it's.
But I think it's all the same thing. I really believe, I think it's all the same thing. And to me, this is kind of like his last big chance. Like I felt about Jorge Martin. I even said to his team manager beginning of the season, Gino Borsoy, when he came in, I was like, Gino, please get across to Jorge. If you say that it's okay, I'm going to do the same. I'll say to Jorge as well, as an ex-rider, and he knows that I support him, and I please say to him that if he doesn't do the job in 23, fully focused, do the job while he's got the best bike, then he can lose the best bike, and it's a slippery slope, Then next minute you're not on the best bike anymore. You haven't got the chance to win the championship anymore, and it goes down. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And he turned it around, and I'm super pleased for him. But what I'm saying is, I believe Jack, even though it's a different stage of the career, and Jack's been doing it for more years, I really believe that he has the same opportunity. Let's see what he does with it. Okay.
Yeah. What you said about Jorge regarding his girlfriend, because it seems like they have a beautiful relationship in the moment,
Yep.
and she's really supporting him.
Yep.
And there was a picture, I don't know if it was in 22 or 21, after the FIM awards.
Yeah.
Or the MotoGP awards. I don't know if you know this. It's a hilarious picture where Jorge was in a club, and there were 3 women dressed as policemen,
Yeah, I
and they
saw the
were
picture. Yeah.
handcuffing him.
Yeah.
That's where you knew, okay, he's distracted.
Well, no, we didn't. I mean, I didn't know his girlfriend. It's the same girl, the 2 years, but I didn't know her. She was quite new on the scene. I knew she was an influencer, and I knew Jorge was distracted, and he wasn't preparing as well as he could. So I didn't know what the distraction was. Could be all or any of those things. But Jorge's found a way to get it all on track. Meaning, excuse the pun, but get it all in line. And I have got to meet her in the meantime, and I've got to say I was really impressed. She's intelligent, really sweet, engaging. Like not thinking that she's above you and float past. She talks to you, answers you, and I was really impressed. So, and he's fully in love. He really believes that she's behind him, and good for them. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
The importance of having a good woman in your life
Yeah,
is
exactly.
second
So
to
true.
none. I
Yep.
mean, you can't measure it in a way, but whatever you do in life, if you have a good woman supporting you, you will be more successful. And if you
And
go
stronger,
out,
basically. Yeah.
on dates all the time, like swiping on Tinder all the time, it's
Distracted. Yeah.
distracting, and it's
Yep.
also it's killing
Completely.
your time, which you could use better. It doesn't
Well,
make you happy.
the way I always say it to young riders is that if you have a good lady, you are stronger. Of course, a bad one will destroy
Yeah,
you,
of
but a
course.
good one makes you stronger. And the other thing is, the other half of your brain you're spending on chasing girls can be used focused on the job. And so it's basically as simple as that. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it's like the simple stuff. For example, I've been woken up by my girlfriend multiple times. Hey, breakfast is ready. So I get up, then there's breakfast on the table. I eat, and we do our shit. But I don't have to worry at that day to make breakfast. And on the other days, I wake up and do stuff for her. So it's trying to improve each other, and both can
Team.
elevate their level of their relative success in life if you have a good working relationship, and it's so important.
Bang on. And also, just something I'd share there is in the beginning, it's a little bit competitive, it can be between men and women, when in a relationship, it's both showing that you can good at things. But when you figure out, like my wife and I have, as I realize how good she is with technical stuff, meaning computers and accountancy stuff and all of that side, and frees me up for the things that I'm better at, then you're a really strong team. If you both end up, if we stayed competing, trying to both, me trying to do that stuff and her trying to do the stuff I'm good at, you're weaker.
Yeah.
So that was good. Anyway, I'm sure people want to hear more about MotoGP, not this.
Yeah. So we were talking about Jack Miller, which brings us to KTM. And I've been very convinced that the steel frame was the reason why KTM always was inconsistent. And now they are developing this carbon frame. So what do you know about it, and what do you think are like the benefits of the carbon frame compared to the steel frame?
Well, the main one that the riders were requesting, the main thing was drive grip, rear grip, and that was confirmed by both Jack and um, Brad. That was the thing that the carbon chassis touched, as in their words, was the rear grip. And excuse me, I even heard a journalist say to them, "Oh, the top speed's better here. Is your engine?" And they looked at each other, and I think it was Jack said, "I think you're seeing the result of that rear grip." You know, meaning it's not spinning, it's pushing forward, and you're reaching a higher speed. So that is the main thing that the carbon fiber chassis did. I don't think it's a huge difference. I'm sure that they're trying more, trying to, you know, experiment. And I mean, especially for it to, it's quite amazing that it turned up and was better straight away. It shows the job both KTM are doing, but also Danny, but they're obviously, KTM obviously giving Danny very good stuff for him to prefer it, because I heard that he preferred it before it even turned up. So the to answer your question, but it's rear grip that it helped.
The thing is, KTM entered MotoGP in 2014, right?
Yeah.
And they started developing.
Oh, sorry,
Let's say,
I leave the
yeah,
statistics to you guys,
yeah,
my fellow journalists. But yeah, you'll
yeah.
remember better than me. But carry on.
Let's
Sorry.
let's say they roughly developed the steer frame for MotoGP for 10 years. So imagine how good the carbon frame will be in 10 years when it's better
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. One of the first versions is better. You're
I
right.
mean, this could be if Ducati doesn't get on it. I mean, Aprilia is apparently working with a
Yes.
carbon frame as well, but
Yeah.
this could be a new deciding factor in the power rankings of MotoGP manufacturers, if you think about it, because you
Yeah.
can do so much with carbon.
Yes. The engineers that I've spoken to about it, we've got to remember there's one weakness, and that is weakness in a crash. You know, um, like I know that KTM lost a couple of chassis, maybe both from Jack on was it Friday at Valencia. Maybe that's why the gas bikes didn't get to try them, because they were short a couple. But there is a weakness, in crashing, both easier to break, but difficult to find out if it is broken. And so if you've got any doubt, you have to change, put another one in. But the engineers I've spoken to about it say it's just a different material, and you're trying to hit some numbers, in areas flex wise, and it's how you use that material. The different materials can reach. It's just what one you have experience with, and enable yourselves to hit those numbers, in different areas. And of course, aluminium and steel is going to react different to carbon fiber in some ways, but I understand what he was telling me. If you're trying to hit a certain weakness or flex in this area, it's your experience with that material to be able to hit it straight away, or sooner, is what the answer is. To not that a certain material is the golden ticket. It's the experience to be able to use it the way you need.
Yeah, but I think the range of possibilities to use carbon to what you need is much bigger than with steel and aluminium. And if you figure it out, apparently they have people from Red Bull Racing working on it as well. that they have a huge database, they have a lot of knowledge.
Yep.
That if they figure it out, it can be a real advantage. And regarding the crashing, that's always going to be the downside of carbon. Funnily enough, I've talked with a friend of mine over the last couple of weeks because he wants to get a new road bike and he wants to get a carbon bike. And I was like, dude, no, don't buy it, because if you crash it once, you can throw it in the bin.
You mean bicycle?
Yeah,
Yeah,
bicycle. And that's always going to be the downside of the carbon. But I don't know if there's a way to figure out more quickly if the frame is cracked in one way or another.
I'm sure they'll work on that. It's
Yeah.
some sort of X-ray. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's some type of X-ray anyway. But hey, you're just our whole family's got carbon bikes.
Yeah.
Bicycles. Yeah.
But
My wife, my daughter, and me.
did you crash it?
Not my son. No, exactly. No, I haven't
Yeah.
crashed it. So
Like, that's, I believe they're great, and I'm not trying to argue that aluminium bikes are better, but they're more safe, and especially if you do it only just for fun, then it's maybe not worth the extra buck, you know? But
I got a super deal on them, so
yeah,
I'm happy. Yeah, they're beautiful.
do what you gotta do. But
Yeah, exactly.
that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Regarding KTM, we have now the Rookie of the Year in 2024 and Pedro Acosta.
Yep.
No, the Rookie of the Year in 2024, Pedro Acosta, without the end. And what do you think about his test?
It was impressive, you know. The thing is, people keep asking me, "Oh, what do you think? Is he gonna, results wise?" And I just refuse to talk about that, because the really important thing that the people that know what he has to go through, to learn how to ride a MotoGP bike, and how not just ride it, but how to give feedback, and how to stay safe, and how to make them work, and there's so much that it is stupid to put expectations on the first year guy, and that I know people can't help but try to guess, but it is stupid to. And I listened to his debrief, and someone I was obviously speaking to him, because he was exactly the same thinking. And Akiayo, his old team manager, and KTM would have all been saying this, because you don't want that young rider who's going to quickly go up to hurt himself. And the way to hurt himself is put expectation on him, And so, and it's not the same as Marc Marquez. People say, "Oh, what about Marc?" Marc didn't have 8 or 9 buttons and levers on his left-hand handlebar, It was, it was a good bike back then, the Honda. But things have moved on, man. There's so much more electronic stuff, aero, the ride height devices, and then all the maps to change. I just think, let him have his time. When I got to ride that Ducati in Misano, I got 6 laps on it, and I said what about the ride height device thing? And he goes, the engineer said, "Simon," actually it was a crew chief of Michele Pirro, who I know, he really knows his stuff. He's the crew chief at the test team. He said, "Simon, it takes the riders whole race weekends to figure out how to use this thing. You got 6 laps, just ride the bike," And can you imagine what Pedro's going through, having to learn? And they would have just put a setting in that they knew was a good base setting, go and ride it, and then see if you can make friends before we start changing things. So that's all I want to say. All I want to see from him is he's going to surprise us. He's fantastic, but I don't have expectations on him. I want him to get through this period where the risk of injury is high. Then we'll start having some expectations,
Yeah, and I hate this Marc Marquez comparison, because in 2013 there were 4 competitive bikes on the grid.
Yeah, exactly.
And in 2024, every bike is
It's competitive.
competitive, more or
Very
less.
good point. Very
And
good point.
also, additionally, what you said. So it makes me wonder, what do rookies do when they step on a MotoGP bike for the first time? Like, what's the game plan for the first test?
Well, I mean, it's quite obvious for everyone out there. I know I'm only repeating what you would have heard, but you have to learn things or start from the front of the bike. I mean, the tires are completely different than what he's been riding on. They're a big step up from the Moto2 tires. Then there's I mean, just to mention tires, the compounds, and that test, it's so scary to get caught out with cold tire and crash your brains out. And then, okay, so there's tires, there's brakes to have to get used to. Everyone gets caught out with the brakes, forget to get them hot. Just for the listeners that don't know what it's like, when you pull the brake lever on these things, it's the hardest brake you've ever felt. There's no sponginess. It feels solid. Like it feels like the lever is welded to the handlebar. There's that much movement. Nothing. You pull it and go. It's solid because all the lines, there's no sponginess. It's a race thing. But when they're cold, there is no friction. So you pull the brake, and it feels like it literally is welded to the bar, and there's no lines to the brakes. There is um, zero friction, zero brakes. So you have to that's why you see them going dab, 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 dab all the way out of pit lane until they up to temperature. Then obviously the crazy amount of power and trying to manage the wheelie is very difficult because it's the rider's job to non-stop try to manage it, fight it with the angle, with their body position, because if it's wheeling, it's not going forward. So then there's all the engine maps, the meaning traction control. Do you want more engine brake, less engine brake? Do you want more torque, less torque, or torque maps? I mean, you get the picture. Then there's all of the normal riding stuff, where to make the time that we just had to worry about before all this stuff came out, meaning how to make the lap, what angle, how to brake, how to turn, when to stand up the bike and drive out. He's got all this stuff to learn.
Okay. And you touched on tires, and I would like to quickly go to Moto 3 and Moto 2 because I was wondering, what do you think will the impact be of Pirelli substituting the Dunlop tires?
Well, I think from what I've seen, they're faster, something like a second faster. And the thing is, they have different, Dunlop and Pirelli, all the manufacturers have different approaches. Dunlop were turning up with tires that were on the harder side in general. It's a generalization. And they could do fastest laps on the last lap. And what I've seen from Pirelli and Superbike and Super Sport is they turn up with a tire. I actually like it. They turn up with they turn up with a tire that is made for the distance you have to manage it. The best, which is it's my favorite way of competing because it is the fastest way. The idea is to get to the end of the race and nothing's left. The Dunlops are getting to the end of the Moto2 races, and some of them they could have done another race. And so, of course, with these different different mindsets, different approaches, the Pirelli is going to be faster because basically you're having a softer tire. That'll be destroyed if you don't manage it well, but it'll be awesome if you do. So a lot of manufacturers don't like doing that because then the rider stands on the podium and says, "Oh, it was dead in the last couple of laps," which is bad advertising. But actually, the tire manufacturer did the job really fast, got him out there, and just hung on the last couple. It's the way to win. So all I'm saying is Pirelli's approach. The tire will feel different because all of the manufacturers make different construction and rubber that feels different. Like the Pirelli's quite famous for moving, but meaning you're on the brakes going into the corner and the thing will move around, but you can still go faster. Keep going a little bit more. Where the say, for example, the Michelin and partly the Dunlop, it's because it's a harder feel. You go grip, grip, grip. Then if it starts to move, that's when you're on your face. You've already crashed, and so I don't know what more information you want, but whenever you turn up with, just the last thing I should mention, whenever you turn up with a different tyre manufacturer, because not only rubbers but constructions are different, often always you have different spring rates, different ways of using the suspension to help that different tyre. So you're going to, they pretty much bolted them in and went faster. That's because, like I was saying, they will be softer. But to get the most out of them, the interesting thing will be over the first races of the season, who figures out, tests and races, who figures out how to get the most out of that tyre and make it last, which is what linkages, rear suspension linkage, rear shock setup, rear spring, whether it's softer spring, more preload, different stuff like this to get the most out of that tyre.
I was wondering when you said that you had to manage the Pirelli tire a little bit more, if it would condense the field a little bit more, because in MotoGP races we see it a lot. Tracks like Phillip Island is very famous for it, super demanding on the tires.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to manage a lot, that condenses the field for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden you have this
sprint
period
Yeah.
where everybody goes, and then you see where the race is decided. Do you think it will be equal in Moto2?
Sorry, when I was saying managing it, I didn't mean managing throttle-wise as much as like what you were talking about is managing with the throttle to get to the end of the race so you don't eat your tyres up. But what I meant was managing it in the team and the rider use electronic settings, suspension settings, and then finally, maybe throttle from the rider to get the most out of that tyre. That's what I was meaning
Okay.
more. That I think they'll turn up with the right tyre for the distance, but they don't leave as much margin from what I've seen.
Okay.
So someone who has a shit bike setup and is electronic and as a cowboy on the throttle may struggle to get to the end, where the teams that know what they're doing and the riders that think about it will be fast over the full distance, really, we saw it, for example, it's just an example, we saw it, Toprak, he, punctured that tire and went off the rim. Remember that? Yeah.
I was live on this race. It was crazy.
Okay. So, but what I think is this is an example of a manufacturer and electronics and not taking care of the tire as well as some of the other manufacturers, because the tire was good for the race distance. It won, but someone used more of it, and I'm not blaming Toprak. I'm saying the combination of him, his electronic setting, maybe the Yamaha's not as advanced on the electronics or whatever it is, that tyre got used up and the others did the distance without a problem. So that's the examples you're going to see, I think, in Moto2. And
yeah, actually, I talked with Remy about this after the race because he was using the same tire, and he said he was struggling so much with managing the tire because it basically got eaten up alive or on this mixed conditions. And also he said he wasn't competitive at all because he had to manage so much, and he was very, very impressed that Toprak, what he was leading, I believe, that Toprak was so
fighting
fast
for the win.
Yeah, that he was so fast. But he said, I'm not very surprised because I had holes in my tire and Toprak going so much faster than me. It was obvious that he had to suffer from it in one way or another. But it's still not a good look that a tire just explodes during the race.
No, it's not a good look. And that's why you understand why when a tyre manufacturer turns up with tyres that are too hard,
Yeah.
And then it's not the real way to do it, but it stops you looking bad from the manufacturers that are not using the tire well. So there's arguments for both. And if a manufacturer is too sensitive about publicity, then they'll start bringing things that are too hard. Then the rider will fall off because the tire's hard, but that's the rider's fault, you know.
Yeah.
And they'll get on the podium and they'll do the fastest lap at the end of the race, but really the tire's too hard for the distance. It's just they're getting forced by publicity to bring things that are too hard. I like to see the softer ones come, which is the real way, and you manage it, and the race distance will be faster. It's just you open yourselves up for criticism if someone doesn't. A manufacturer, for example, uses the tire too much. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Okay. Back to MotoGP,
Yeah.
because there's a huge thing going down with Dorna, RNF, and crypto data. And I would love to talk to you about it, because I've read a little bit. And what I've heard is that Dorna basically kicked out crypto data out of the paddock. They didn't want anything to do with them, because apparently crypto data wasn't paying their bills. They were the main sponsor in Austria. And also with RNF, I don't know where those bills then are coming from, because the crypto data is owning like 60% of the team and Ruslan, and they were basically blaming each other. And it's just my take on it is that it's weird that we have somebody like Ruslan, who has managed the Sepang circuit, then the Petronas team, and now the RNF team, is all of a sudden unable to pay his bills, because if he wasn't clean, that would have ended his career a lot earlier, I believe. So with crypto data, it makes a lot of sense that they are at fault. And also the company looked kind of dodgy. Do you know Maddie Patterson, the wife of Simon Patterson?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yep.
I talked with her a lot about it, that MotoGP had a lot of dodgy sponsors where I, as a consumer, A, don't know them, and B, don't trust those companies. And it's, in my opinion, a bad look for the sport. But this kind of things like confirms what I think about crypto data. And before the season started, I actually had a bold prediction that crypto data was going to fold halfway through. So actually, they made it to the end, but I still want to believe that my prediction was correct, that crypto data isn't able to pay. So yeah,
Well, it
what?
sounds like from everything that they were allowed to make it to the end. You know,
Oh, okay,
well, because from everything I've heard, they didn't pay bills. You know, so
okay,
I'm talking from race. Look, this is secondhand. You know, I haven't heard it from the big people, but you know, from race title sponsorship not paying bills. I mean, that's got to be big money. And then all the way down to little people doing, I say little people because it's smaller bills, is doing social media stuff for them weren't getting paid, you know, in the paddock. So when everybody's saying the same thing, you know, look, and also I know that how it works with the teams is the teams have the contract with IRTA. And you know, because it's International Riders Teams Association, IRTA. And part of that contract is saying that you will pay your bills. So, as far as I can see, if you look at it simply, they broke their contract by not paying bills because it is in there. I know that from years ago that you have to be responsible, pay your bills, or you've broken it, you know. And so I think it didn't even have to get as far as Dorna. They've already broken it with IRTA. And then, look, and I'm saying it from a neutral point of view because I don't give a shit either way. Either way, you know, I just think it's bad that you know people don't get paid.
yeah,
So let's hope this new people come in. And I also understand that they own 60% of the team, and I understand that Ruslan lost a lot of power, more than he thought he was going to, you know. That's how I understand it. And so he was kind of sitting there like this, the last part of the season, kind of watching his team head off like a ship without a rudder. So
yeah.
that's how I understand it. But it's all secondhand.
Yeah. And one man's trash is another man's treasure. We get American racing team, hopefully one that pays its bills, because American racing in Moto2, they apparently don't pay their bills and honor contracts as well. So yeah, what do you know about Trackhouse? What do you expect from Trackhouse, like especially off track? Because I've heard that they are in America with the NASCAR thing very good with social media work, and also the team presentation was very American like, so very big and good production and accessible for the consumer.
And
So
I understand the main man is also on the board of GoPro, and so it sounds like it's a serious look. The thing is, that's not my forte. Is
yeah,
this? I much prefer riders, the bikes, what's happening, the track, the stuff I know. Um, but all I can see is positive because the American market in general don't know about MotoGP. And to me, that's sad. We have a great sport that a country of how many million are they?
300.
300 something. Yeah. I mean, it's sad that they, got into Formula One and they don't know about us. Like, we have better racing. So let's hope that this Trackhouse can do that, sell it to that market, which is magic for MotoGP. I'd love to turn up to the American rounds and see a proper crowd because we
Yeah,
haven't seen that. We haven't seen that.
and it's, I believe, a very difficult task to turn things around this quickly, because I've heard that Trackhouse wanted to enter MotoGP in 2025 and not 24, and I believe it was a little bit like a short notice thing.
But you have to take the opportunity when
Yeah,
it
of course,
comes,
of
really,
course.
because of the slots. You just
Yeah,
can't turn up, and
yeah,
all the grid spaces are gone. You have to buy another one, and
yeah.
this was obviously the opportunity. Um, so the other thing there is the Aprilia machinery. It will be great to see exactly what support, because Aprilia are really keen on giving the right support to their satellite team because they're one of the few that don't have. I mean, what's the point of having the feedback from two good riders if it's not on the same machine, you know? And yeah, Aprilia is small, a great bunch of people. I really like the engineers and um, team manager, uh, the main, the big boss, Massimo Rivola as well. I like them, and they're only a small group though. It's Piaggio Group, isn't it? But Aprilia is small, and if they can turn up, I really look forward to see if they can with very similar machinery, the satellite team, Trackhouse, and the factory team. It's only going to be better feedback for them and more competitive for Raul and Miguel. And you saw Raul instantly like the 23 bike, didn't he? He was raving about it fast straight away, said the front end was so much more feedback for him, felt confident. So, yeah, you can expect more competitive results from the team because the bike will be better.
What do you know about all the heat issues the Aprilia has?
Yeah, I spoke a lot to them about heat issues and how to, how they're managing it, and they weren't speaking so much about themselves, but they were saying it's so difficult. I don't know if you saw my tech talk on that. Have a look on. It's a Motul tech rundown that I did, I think, in India this year, and it's on YouTube as well. MotoGP YouTube. The thing is, it's so difficult to manage this thing, and I don't know if you want me to run through all the difficulties, but basically, if you run a bigger rad, that is more drag. The aero guy is going, no, I would rather help you by getting it out the back, easier, because if you can let that hot air out, you get more through. It does the same as running a bigger rad with less air traveling through it, And so a bigger rad is harder to push at high speed. So they run a thinner rad, then they can't let it out straight out the side because it mucks up the aerodynamics, pumping air out the side and slows the bike down. And then where they do pump it out, if they pump it out near the rider, the whole bike works better, but then the rider performance goes down, and they're saying the rider performance drop is bigger than the others, meaning if you have the engine too hot, you'll lose performance. If you dump it outside, you'll lose aerodynamics. But if you dump it onto the rider, you lose more than all that with the rider going, like dropping in lap time. So all I'd like, and sorry, the other thing is fuel boiling. So fuel boils in general, rough idea, about 65 degrees, but everything around that fuel tank is way hotter than that. So they're trying to cool that tank with a ducting air around it. They call it an air cushion around to keep the fuel tank below that, because as soon as it starts boiling as bubbles, then the fuel pump can't pick it up, so the engine dies. And they're saying, especially towards the end of the race with a low volume splashing around, it's easy to boil and the engine stops. They had a lot of that beginning of MotoGP days. Most bikes stopping was that rather than blowing up, early days. So nightmare. But yeah, you saw the little ducks in that they were feeding onto riders in was it Thailand? Can't remember now. One of the hot races at the end. And no, it wasn't Thailand. Can't remember. One before Valencia. Where were we?
No, this wasn't in Qatar. It was before Qatar. Maybe Qatar? Indonesia?
Yeah. Anyway, they were pumping. I think it might have been Thailand. Heat, cooler air through the screen and fuel tank into the face of the rider and that. But all I'm saying is, it's no easy task, So basically, the riders were overheating, so they've got to steal some from performance from the bike or the engine temperature and take it off the riders. That's what I understand.
Do we know from the Valencia test, because obviously it was quite cool, do we know if they made some progress there, or will we only find out at the hotter races?
So the last hot race, it was more manageable. The riders could finish. They did two things that I saw, and that is dump it out the side, meaning the slots out the side were twice the size. So they basically sacrificed some aerodynamics to get heat out, and not put it on the rider. And then, put less on the rider. And then they had those little tubes, like I said. So the riders said, yeah, it was manageable. I could finish the race now, where before it wasn't possible. So, I mean, you can guarantee they'll work all winter on these things. The aero department, that'll be their job, working on that.
Did Aprilia bring the carbon chassis to Valencia?
Yes. It was only used by Savadori. And when he was asked about it in his debrief on that Tuesday night, he said it has strengths in some areas and weakness in others, and it's not ready to give to the factory guys yet. We have to have another go, and so it's no negatives, that's what they're aiming at. So that he's basically saying it's not ready.
Okay, so we don't expect them to race it in 24?
No. I would say more versions until it beats, There'll be more versions of Qatar for sure. He's probably playing somewhere else, over winter, trying to. But we'll have more the shakedown, and he'll be on for sure on it again or another version. But once they've got it to the point where he thinks, like the Pero one, Pero thinks an aluminium one's better. They'll have it in Kuala Lumpur to try for sure. But it sounds like Aprilia, the carbon chassis, is not at that stage yet.
Okay. I would like to ask you something more general regarding every manufacturer, because every manufacturer is riding with those rear wings now, which is very strange.
Yep.
Especially like the Aprilia one when they introduced it, or the Yamaha one where they had this Jack called it like a spoiler they got from Opel Corsa. Yeah.
He's brilliant, isn't he?
So I was wondering because the Stegosaurus from Ducati seems to work pretty good. And Yamaha and Honda tried to adapt it, and KTM is running their own version of it. Not of
KTM
the
have got about 3 that I've seen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they started with this triangular one, then they had, or no, they started with the squared one, then they had the triangular one, and now they have a updated version of the squared one. It looks like, and Aprilia, they have this basic wing on it. So, what's your understanding of the direction where MotoGP will go with this? Do you believe that the
Well,
Stegosaurus type is more successful, or like
no,
the
I really don't know because I'm not an aero expert. But what I can tell you is how the development went, because right at the beginning, it was aimed at. You remember, was it Valentino broke an engine over the rise at the end of the Strait of Magellan? Remember that? And then, I mean, both wheels were lifting off. They were kind of jumping off there because it was before real aero. And then they put the wings on the bike, and the difference is amazing. I've ridden a years of Mugello, and I love that last sector over that rise because you're leaning over at 300 something kilometers an hour over that blind rise. You lean left from the pit lane exit there, and you literally have to stand on the pegs so your bum's not on the seat and keep your head down in the fairing, but to try and keep the bike from wheeling because that is an anti-wheelie technique, it's pushing weight on the foot peg and keeping low. And otherwise, you're basically fighting the wheeling over that brow at 300 something kilometers an hour. It's wonderful. I love it. And then I got to ride I rode 2 bikes there, the BMW, the GoPro bike with the big wing on it. It was like easy, no more wheelie because the front's glued to the ground, especially with that speed. And then the Aprilia I got to ride there, the one from 22. Caparossi had bought it from Aprilia, but it was the race-winning bike from Silverstone of Alatia's. And I got to ride a few laps. No, I only got one flying lap, which is a shame. But I got one, so I got probably 3 times down the front straight. And exactly the same. I actually said to the guys afterwards, it went from me fighting over that brow for all those years to an aging, overweight track dayer can hold it full there, just sitting on it. The bike's glued to the ground. So after telling you that, then they still had the problem of the rear lifting over there. So the front's glued to the ground, but the rear was still spinning, and because they can tell the RPM goes up and on the telemetry, and so they went, oh, let's stick a wing on the back, which makes sense, doesn't it? So in the beginning, it was to keep it on the ground over that rise and hope that it helps in the braking area, but which helps you all the braking zones because the limiting factor is either front lock or rear lifting, right? So if they can keep the rear on the ground, and I believe that's what they were aiming at, is the front on the ground accelerating, the rear on the ground braking. But the unexpected, which often happens with everything that they try on the bikes, when talking to the riders, and in my own experience, is it helped in a different area as well, and that is exiting fast turns. They had more rear grip. And that is, I know, is what Brad liked about the KTM one. So they were aiming it at something, and they got a positive in another area. So um, I'm just trying to give you all the info, but then you can put the puzzle together. I don't know which one works better. They're playing with all different shapes in that, but it doesn't just help in the braking area; it's helping on exits of fast turns as well.
For somebody who doesn't understand a lot of aerodynamics, I think it's easy to get your head around on the Aprilia or the KTM spoiler, but the Ducati one is a little bit difficult. And with a motorcycle, you always have to think about every lean angle where it has to work. Like if it works in a straight line but is garbage during corners, then it's no benefit, you know. And it looks like to me that the Ducati one is much better during corners, because uh, when you lean the bike over, then all of a sudden you have this downforce thing on one side of the Stegosaurus, and it's more or less straight on the other, so it looks like the air just passes by. And it's also supposed to be a lot better in braking, which is weird for me because it's not as obvious as, let's say, the Aprilia or the KTM wing.
I mean, we're talking about something that's invisible, and I hate to guess. Anyway, I just like to hear from engineers and riders what it does. And I mean, you remember the side, for example, the wing on the side of the Ducati. You know, it's like you know what I'm saying, like a big C, like your hand. I'm trying to, for people that are just listening, the wing on the very side, halfway down the fairing, it, it's like a big U bend, you know, like goes. This thing here, when other manufacturers tried it, again, they expected less wheelie and felt more rear contact, you know. And I mean, I know that it might be not exactly the same shape or whatever it is, but all I'm saying is I hate to guess, because often things work differently than we imagine, you know. So it's just the engineers will do something and then get rider feedback and back and look at results and on the computer, you know.
I have two questions before I let you go. The first one is,
Remind me, I've got to tell you something about. We've got to finish on Mark. Okay,
oh,
remind me.
okay.
Okay, I
Yeah,
got
go
one little
ahead
thing for
then.
you. No,
Go
well,
ahead
whenever
then.
you. Okay. Well, what I wanted to do is throw in before the end that this won't be very popular for the Mark Marquez fans out there, but I um, I've already mentioned how I respect his racecraft. I haven't told you about that. His racecraft is unbelievable. Probably the best I've ever seen. Um, Meaning predicting how the race will go, and then having all the plans to fight for those different scenarios. You know what I mean? It's so clever on that. His hunger level, his motivation. You know, no matter it's spectacular. And then his racecraft. His skill. You know, his ability. Um, but he's also extremely ruthless. You know, that's how I see him. It's extremely ruthless. And what I hate, my main hate in my job is people believing something I know is not true. You know, and I didn't know that about myself until I did this job. I hate it out there. People talking and thinking that when in reality it's that. So this is my only motivation is to tell you what I believe happened at the last race when Jorge had a go at overtaking Mark. Mark saw him there. Mark released the brake. Mark turned in, which is all fine, with more speed to beat him there. That's fine. But Mark left him no room. He went to the paint. And as you will remember, if you watched that weekend, whether it's or the sprint and the main race, a lot of people went through that corner bumping and banging, you know, but made it through. But it's because of that. You know how we see Binder go, stand up and give a bit of room, but so because he doesn't want them to crash. He doesn't want to crash himself, you know. But Mark, I believe, went fuck you and went to the paint, gave Jorge nowhere to go, you know, and they both went down. I'm sure Mark was hoping he wasn't going to go down. But I believe that decision caused the crash, you know. And what I don't like is, I mean, I listened to the interviews. Jorge pretty much said what I just said, but I already had told Thomas Burkhardt, the French journalist, because I went to the debrief and I said, Mark knew he was there. He let go the brake, you know, but he gave Jorge no room. Jorge stood up in the debrief and said exactly that. And so what I suspected was what Jorge suspected. Of course, Mark went to his debrief and went, "Oh, I understand why Jorge took so much risk. You know, he's fighting for a championship and blah, blah." Basically, in a clever way, saying There's no chance I did it, you know. You know what I think. So what I will stick up for Mark when it's the other way around. I just want the truth, you know. So I want you guys to have it. That's why I'm saying it.
Marco Bezzecchi said after the race in Valencia that Marc Marquez is the dirtiest rider in MotoGP at the moment because of the incident those two had in turn 3. Would you agree?
I mean, I understand why Marco feels that, because someone rode into the side of him and made him crash from his point of view. The only thing I don't want to get involved in that one. Somebody's come to the house, so you're hearing all 3 dogs. Um, that one was more grey, because the problem, Marco gave him an opportunity because he got a bad exit out of turn 2, and Mark doesn't need a second invitation, you know. Basically, I mean, writers tell me this, you know, they're not going to say it in public because, you know, the Marquez fans or people going, oh, you're just, you know, they just say nothing. You know, Marco was obviously so outraged that he did say something, you know, and said it strong. But the thing is, you cannot give Mark a little sniff of an opportunity, because he will take it, you know. Where another rider in that same position will go, oh shit, yeah, there's a gap for me, but I know we're going to come together and we'll cause a crash. And so I might hesitate, you know. I mean, the thing is, Mark doesn't hesitate, you know. And so it's a little bit more grey, that one. Bez gave an opportunity. Of course, Mark's going to take it, you know. You see what I'm saying? Like, and the thing is, you know, I also love this about Mark, that he's such a racer. He's so ruthless. He'll do whatever it takes to get the result, and it's why he's got so many results, you know. But sometimes he's outright ruthless, you know, like as in they're not caring of other people's health, you know. And I mean, look, I've just remembered the proof of what I've just said is his bike. It wasn't his fault, but his bike took out Johann Zarco so huge. I was commentating on it, and I was, I thought Johann Zarco might have lost a foot at that first turn, you know, exiting pit lane at Germany. And Mark stood up, looked over and saw him lying on the ground, had no idea if he's all right or not, and runs to his garage. I mean, I was going, holy shit, Johan might have lost his foot then. If he didn't lift it in time, it's going to be, if not cut off, smashed to bits. So I want to know if Johan's got his foot. We saw in the replay, Johan saw the bike coming and lifted his foot. Clever, you know. But nobody knew that. Mark didn't know that, but he still runs to his garage. He's missing that last bit of, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know. But it's also what makes him so bloody strong and so dangerous for the championship for next year. But where you like that line to be drawn is up to everyone's opinion, you know.
Regarding Johann Zarco, I think this is once again one of those little proofs that MotoGP riders are built different, that they're superhuman, because nobody would have had this reaction time. And also, I don't actually believe that Johan saw this. I believe he heard Mark crashing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, totally.
Then to think about in a millisecond to lift your leg because it might hit you is utterly ridiculous.
You're right, but it's also experience. You know, by the time these riders are riding in MotoGP, they have a lot of experience and they've experienced all different things, and they learn, and that's why they learn from those experiences, and that's why they're in MotoGP. You know, and it's a fantastic collection of experiences each guy has. You know, to be able to do.
Do you remember this one crash? I believe it was with Cal Crutchlow involved, where he was running towards his bike and then heard another bike crashing and he was jumping while running.
Yes. yeah, and it hit him in the flipped him over.
No,
Flipped him
no,
over.
it
No, that
didn't.
was Joan.
It
That was Joan. Sorry, again, that was Joan,
yeah.
another one.
Yeah. No,
But
it didn't
yeah,
hit him, but it just looked ridiculous because he was jumping out of the blue.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, fortunately, it didn't hit him.
yeah.
Regarding Mark, I think when he's been in MotoGP for 10 years. When you collect like the body of work with his
Yes.
crashes and all of this, it's it gets to a point where you wonder, okay, why is always Mark involved when there's something, you know? When there's something like not Joan Zarco, I'm sorry, something like Jorge Martin in Valencia, like as you said, you could have left a little bit more space, but Mark didn't because he was so um, yeah, so focused on getting a good result with Honda that he didn't want to leave any room there.
Yeah.
So it's it's a little bit weird that why is it always Mark, you know? Whenever there's a crash, and it may be his fault, like obviously in Portugal, but there are other things where he puts the blame to somebody else. Like, why is it always Mark? It has to be something with him, you know? And therefore
No,
I
no, no.
understand.
I like to look at each incident, fairly from both angles and using my experience. I made it to that class and have my own experiences of all different situations and see stuff that people that haven't had the same experience don't see. And that's why I like to share it and I want to do it in a very fair way, you know. Um, but yeah, Mark does think differently. He has that extra, um, and I don't want to be unfair. I also want to say that he always manages to find a way to get the job done, and at any cost, and it's spectacular to watch. I really admire him. It's just certain times that I go, oh my god, and one of them was the Joe and Zaku one. Another one, I mean, it was only a little bit the Jorge one, but I knew it happened, and I went, oh man, that because it was unnecessary. They could have both made it through, but he knew that Jorge was faster than him. So you can draw your own conclusions. Who knows what he was thinking? I can't put words in his mouth. It's not fair. But okay, then there's another one that I was thinking about is how's this? I didn't plan to go into this one, but remember the last time we saw him refusing to give up a slipstream, a tow, and it was Franco Morbidelli in
Sepang.
Sepang. And I was commentating at the time again, watching really closely, and it is there's no rule against it, towing someone, but that when he pushes it to the point where, come on, there's no rule against it because always before Mark, someone would push it to a point where the rider in front would tell them, physically not to fuck off, leave me alone. And at a certain point of the rider doing that, out of respect, the rider following goes, oh, all right, mate, keep your shirt on. I'll carry on. I'll find someone else, or I'll sneak up on you when you're not looking, And so there hasn't needed to be a rule. But Mark is pushing it to the point where there now, I believe, needs to be a rule that, they need to think about a way that you can't keep trying to harass someone to that point. I don't think it's correct to harass someone to that point. And look, the way I like it, liken it to is a lady goes out for a night with her friends to the bar, and a guy asks her out. Goes, can I, you're going to buy you a drink, but whatever his angle is, and she gives him a rebuff, tells him to go away once, tells him to go away twice. And then after that, there's, society has to make some rules, some laws for that 1% that doesn't give up, you know? And I see Mark as that 1% that you need to make a rule for when it comes to the slipstreaming thing. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. I mean, if I was race direction at this moment, I would have black flagged him because, in my opinion, it was getting very dangerous because there were a couple of riders like 5 seconds behind going fast. And, Frankie was braking all of a sudden on the main straight and
Which
Mark
is
was
not
going.
safe either, like you're
Yeah,
right.
obviously.
But then Mark can blame, from race direction wise, you can say, oh, Frankie's doing something unsafe, It's just that we've been pushed into a new level, so we need to rethink. I hope race direction do.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Mark's on a Ducati now, so, people will be following him.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see if how this plays out. I
Yeah.
have now my two questions before I
Yeah,
let you
far away.
go.
Yep.
Do you like the new concession system?
I agree that it needed updating because it wasn't working. It wasn't working is proof of that because Yamaha and Honda were really in the shit. And it, wow, did you hear that car? There's a couple of nice cars that live up further up the mountain than me, and yeah. There's one, a couple of different Ferraris and stuff like that. It's amazing. So nice. It's some YouTuber, one of them. Well, there's money in making videos. Hey,
And
anyway,
also, there's money in living in Andorra and not having to pay all the taxes.
money and living in Andorra. What are you talking about?
I mean,
You
I
have to earn the
know.
money to start with.
Yeah, that's correct. That's absolutely correct. And I do not mean this in a critical way.
No. But I'm just saying, there's not money in living in Andorra. You have to earn the money,
Yeah,
and then there's
yeah.
a reason
Then
to come to Andorra.
there's,
So
yeah,
you don't want to
yeah,
give half it away or three
yeah,
quarters.
yeah, yeah. But
So,
regarding my question, do you like the concession system?
yeah. So I genuinely believe I'm going to try and answer it honestly and not because it's clear that it wasn't working. The concessions were designed to help Ducati when they were shit. And the Honda and Yamaha were like, yeah, let's help them and let's do whatever we need them in here, And so now it's shoe on the other foot. It is right that basically Yamaha and Honda are the biggest manufacturers, and because of that, they pay the most money to the riders that can make their bikes look better than they are. And because of those amazing riders, they haven't earned concessions. And really, they should have because the bikes have been shit for a couple of years. Sorry, Honda and Yamaha. They've been way behind, It's just the efforts of these incredible riders have got wins, and wins stop you getting concessions. So what they've tried to do is update the concessions. I have no idea whether they're going to work perfectly or not. They might need updating again, but they've tried to make them so the reaction time of the concessions is faster, so we don't see this happen again. But also that riders, just because a manufacturer's got an amazing rider and has one win, then they don't get stopped having the concessions that they deserve. And to me, all of this is good because to me, competitive Yamaha and competitive Honda quickly is a good thing.
I also believe it was a good move to include KTM and Aprilia in there.
It's
Because,
fair.
yeah, because A, you need them on board because they need to agree with this. And second of all, it's good for competition.
Well, the when I heard there was concessions coming, it was Assen this year, and I heard about all the meetings going on. I was like, can, you know, imagine sitting down with KTM and Aprilia and saying, "Hey, can we please give Yamaha and Honda concessions so they don't leave us like Suzuki did?" That was the real worry. Assen, so mid the year, maybe they'll pull out because you can only have bad advertising for so long before you go, this is enough. Paying millions for bad advertising. So, but I can understand Ducati. They were given concessions in the first place. They really made good. They've turned it all around. They're the best bike. But Aprilia and KTM have only just got there, and they haven't really reaped the rewards of all their hard work. They've only just lost their concessions. Okay, KTM lost it too early for this same antiquated reason, a couple of amazing rides from riders when the bike wasn't really good enough to lose concessions. But they had the riders that did it, so they lost the concessions. Then Aprilia lost theirs only just. It seemed the right time. Aprilia were competitive. But imagine then going to them and say, oh, can we handicap you? And you haven't even reaped the rewards of getting out. And so I felt sorry for KTM Aprilia, and I didn't think they would. I didn't know the system they were working on, and I'm glad that they do get a little bit, a small amount, but a little bit of help, because it sounds fair to me.
Yeah, definitely. And last question, do you think the sprint races were a good idea?
Oof. I'm only hesitating because I know the pressure that it puts on the riders, and the teams, actually. So I shouldn't say just riders. Obviously, riders, crazy amount of pressure, but the teams as well, because they've got to change engines at different times, because before they could change them that night, they've got to change them a day earlier, because instead of, you can lose an engine. Basically, you can run an old engine in Friday, but if you have to qualify, that you can run you used to be able to run an old engine also on Saturday, especially on Friday, but also on Saturday, and maybe just check the one out, get it right, test it, ready for Sunday, the one that's lower mileage. The teams are changing engines earlier. They've more stress on them. Sorry to make this longer, but the riders, the amount of pressure I saw them on the beginning of this year, when they had riders sitting in, excuse, I'm going to swear because it needs it, a fucking press conference on a Saturday night after a sprint, 2 hours after the race, the sprint, not allowed to be called a race. There's 2 hours after the sprint. They're still in their sweaty leathers. When they've got a race tomorrow, they should be thinking about that, the main race. I felt sorry for them. I even said something to the biggest people politely on a flight because I was worried about the mental health of the rider on a Saturday night sitting in his leathers, and he's one of the main guys. I didn't think it was right. I don't think they listened to me, but soon after the press conference was stopped on Saturday, so I think the riders kicked up a stink, which good. They didn't need that hassle on Saturday night when the big one's on Sunday. You can have the big long press conference and all that on the Sunday when everything's done. So I feel strong about that. But at the end of the day, I like the sprint. I like it. So if it's managed right, that you don't load too much shit on teams and riders, I think it's a great addition. It's exciting. So there's swings and roundabouts. It's tough on the riders, but it's great for the show. And the last thing, someone said that I wish they only had them at half the races, and it's not bad. I like that, but how do you decide that? And meaning also the circuits that you give the sprint to take the gate for Saturday as well, and you're helping them when you're punishing someone else. So I imagine that would be a hot potato, to manage. So that's not my job. I just gave you my opinions on what I think.
My opinion as a fan
Yep.
is that it kind of is like a spoiler for the main race.
Okay.
And I remember up until this season, or last season technically, there was this level of anticipation for a race where you didn't know what was going to happen. And regardless if the sprint played out the same way as the race eventually did or another way, this anticipation was gone. And I think it's a little bit
Okay. Yeah.
inflationary
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these races there.
I
Because,
respect
like,
that.
for example, take Portimao. In Portimao, you had Pecco winning the sprint, and Mark was on the podium. and I don't remember who was also on the podium in the sprint. But the race was more or less the same, except that Mark wiped out Jorge and Miguel. But then you go to the race and think, okay, Pecco is
Kind of
strong
know,
here.
you
He
know what's going to
probably
happen.
wins
Yeah, yeah.
again. And then obviously there's this factor of unpredictability you have in a race where everything could happen, but it takes away from this anticipation, and I don't really like it.
So you're telling the young ladies out there, don't make love to the boys Friday and Saturday night. Save it for Saturday. Make them wait Friday.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey, no, I totally understand what you're saying, man, and
Yeah.
I really respect that straight up. I can really, I know that feeling of qualifying on Saturday night. I always used to look at who's qualified, and even when I was working doing track days, I had the app. My wife got it for me so I could sit in the bath on a Saturday and watch the interviews and see who did in qualifying, ready for Sunday, and all excited, you know. And so I understand, but yeah, it's above my pay grade. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
able to change anything.
Yeah.
But I I did see a lot more enthusiasm on Saturdays, you know, this
Yeah.
year. So I liked that, and I liked the sprints. I liked I liked watching them. But there's also a balance of the pressure on everyone. But like I said, nothing I say will change anything. So
Yeah. And apparently Dorna made a lot of money with it. There were more fans on Saturdays. There were more people watching on TV, obviously.
yep,
There
yep.
were apparently more sponsors or bigger sponsorship deals made. So at the end of the day, it's a business and they won't change it if they make money with it, even though a lot of riders got hurt. A lot of riders don't
You
like
know,
the idea.
the thing that is tough is more than I would say about 18 races. You know,
Hmm.
I think I got to throw in there that me gauging people in the paddock and their time away from home and their effort, because they put big effort in. Everyone in every particular job, they're all putting big effort in, And I noticed around 18 races, not much more anyway, 19 maybe, is the kind of threshold where over that you're burning people out, and so that's what I worry about long term. Is I'm okay because I always say my kids are grown up now. I left the paddock. That was the reason. As my son turned up in 2021 when I was working as an Olin's technician, and I could not handle it. I realised I'm out. And I never thought I'd come back. And when I see people in that position now, I feel sorry for them. Basically younger people that their lives aren't as settled as mine. They're it's hard. And when it's more than 18, it's very hard. So that's my main concern, more than the sprint.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for joining me again. And I would love to see you commentating races, especially with instances like Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez in Valencia, to get your thoughts out immediately. I think you do a phenomenal job. I always like to listen to your commentary, and also like our 2 or 3 hour long conversations. I learn a lot from it, and it's very great to talk to you. I'm very thankful that you do this.
Really appreciate that, buddy. I got to say, the main reason I don't commentate on races is my own confidence. It's that, you know, um, I love the other sessions. I can get the information across. But the journalists that can talk flat out the whole time, that's not me. It's not my forte. And if that's what they want, I don't want to do that. So I just said right from the start, I'll do the other sessions, whatever you want, because I enjoy that. But I don't want to, and I really enjoy qualifying. But it's a confidence thing myself. I don't think I can do what uh, I can't make myself like them. So if they want me to do it like I do in the practice, great. But if they want it like that, I can't do it.
The thing is, during free practice, you really shine because you have a long time to elaborate, and you're somebody who likes to elaborate on a lot of things, and that's why it's so great to talk to you. But during the races, you usually don't have the time because it's so fast paced.
Yeah.
But still, you have, let's say, Matt Bird as a
Information, yeah.
yeah, but you have
Oh,
Matt Bird as a partner who could do the talking.
yeah.
And then when there's expertise needed from
Yeah.
your side, you could provide it. And I think this would be a lot, even 3 people in the booth would
Well,
work better
I would like
because,
that. I would like
yeah,
that when I've got stuff, because when I try to come in from pit lane, it's too hard, you know. And
that's,
normally they come back to me, and the moment's passed, you know, or the bikes are coming by. So I would like what you said. I would like to
yeah,
do the races in the box with them and just jump in when I've got some info.
yeah.
Like, I would like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the thing with the pit lane, I really hated. Also, the interviews in the free practice sessions or qualifying sessions, you know. I mean, the content in itself isn't the problem, but you don't understand anything when the bikes are flying by,
Yeah.
and it's really not a good
You
listen.
might have noticed I'm doing less interviews in the pit lane, because I try to catch them when either there's no beginning or the end, when there's no noise, or out the back, and not everyone will come out the back. So I'm just catching the people that will go out the back of the garage, and then you have a good conversation. But you've got less content, but I think it's better,
Yeah.
you know. So that's what I try and do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I
Anyway,
think it would be better, for example, if you interview somebody like Davide Tadozzi, to do it between sessions or after a session when he has some
we're
time,
not
you know.
live though, you know. So you
Yeah,
see
but
what I
we live
mean?
in a world of social media, so you can always
Oh
post
yeah,
this
that's
on
someone
social
else's
media.
job.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, hey, I hope I was useful. I'm going to go and
a
cook some
lot.
food for my family. That's my
Yeah,
off-season job.
yeah,
I cook for my little family. I love it.
yeah. Thanks again for joining me. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you,
And
Leo.
see you. Goodbye.
See you, buddy. Big hug. Big hug to all. Hope you all have a good Christmas.
Thanks.